Welcome back to Talk Jamaica here on Talk Jamaica Radio. We are streaming live on talkjamaicaradio.com. My name is Ralston Chamberlain. My co-host this afternoon is Sanjay Lewis. He's sitting in for Ricardo Brooks. Sorry, listeners, we're supposed to be joined in this segment by the PSOJ CEO Dennis Chong. We're still trying to get him on the line, but in the meantime,
I want to touch on something, Ralston, that Richard
please.
Biles brought up last week when he had the Epoch briefing. And the thing that stood out in my mind, and I think it's a question that we had asked Audley Shaw when he was on, I think it was 2 weeks ago, is where is the funding coming from to fund the additional part of the threshold when they raise it to 1.5 million? Is it a case that that gap in the budget is going to come through increased taxes? Another thing that Richard Biles brought to the fore, which I didn't even realize, is that the drawdown that the government would normally receive from the NHT comes to an end next year. It
Mhm.
simply means that the government is out by about $30 billion. There's 30 billion shortfall in the budget. Now remember that this administration had issues with the fact that the then government, the People's National Party, dipped into the NHT funds to get to shore up budget. So where is this funding is going to come from? No, because they can't go to the NHT because there is hell about it. So where is the funding going to come from?
Well, I don't know that they cannot go to the NHT. But what would be shameful and vulgar is if they would now go and and pretend as if they did not oppose it at the time. And I hear Dr. Phillips saying that he would not have an issue if this present administration was to go to the NHT and do the same thing that they had done, as long as it is done in a way, or there is justifiable reasons for doing that. And I think it comes to a very important issue that we must not, and that oppositions ought not to find themselves falling into that trap of opposing for opposing sake, because here we have it now. If this present administration has to dip into the NHT, the people are going to say, but what a shameless set, who had vehemently opposed it, who had raised Cain about it, and here we come, they're doing the same thing. So it's something that is worth, that I and others are going to look forward to see what is going to happen. Again, we need to ask, and I think I had asked Mr. Shaw this when he was on, where is that money going to come from to make up for that amount that Richard Biles spoke about? Is it that they're expecting that based on compliance, tax compliance, they will get that intake? We are going to be looking forward to, or is it that Mr. Shaw is going to come to us with another tax budget?
Well,
Some serious
you
questions.
see, I can understand why the government or the opposition of the day would oppose the government dip into the National Housing Trust, the fund, because that fund was set up for a specific purpose. And I think for too long, we have different funds, whether it is the TEF or the National Housing Trust, that the government believe that they can dip in it to shore budget because of a shortfall. So I can understand why the opposition, then would have issues with it. But as you rightly said, Ralston, it would have been shameful if the JLP now would go and dip back into the NHT or extend that arrangement for budgetary support. It can't be that while in opposition, you oppose strongly and rightly so that it is wrong. It can't be now that you're in government, it is okay to do it because you need the budgetary support. But the question is, where is it that this money is coming from? And we realize also that Mr. Shaw hinted when he was on our program that they're going to probably seriously consider the tax amnesty. But as we have realized before, Ralston, the tax amnesty is good, but the flow of funds is only for a while, and I'm not sure that that flow will be sufficient or can be sustained for to support that shortfall in the budget.
But and I know they have not said anything much about it, but is this amnesty going to be that they write off the interest of those who have not paid, or is it going to be a complete write off? Because I'm sure a lot of persons are looking forward to this amnesty. But the issue is whether or not there would be sufficient money, as you indicated, Sanjay, coming from this amnesty. And so there are questions out there that need to be answered. But I think we should be cautious. We should be optimistic. I'm hoping that the answers will come, because we will be looking into 2017 soon. A lot of things the IMF deal will come to an end, and so there's a lot of questions that are out there. I think this administration is in a precarious position, yes, and they how they navigate these waters will be very interesting.
I want to also bring to our listeners a piece that Ian Boyne wrote in today's Gleaner Ralston. And in essence, what Mr. Boyne is saying, there's a line that I just read that is so profound in my mind, where he's in essence saying that Peter Phillips, Portia Simpson Miller, Audley Shaw, if you listen to the speech of all three individuals, at some point in time, it all connects, where the what we went through under the People's National Party was something that we needed to have done with the fiscal responsibility, falling in line, though with the help of the IMF, but it was needed. And what Mr. Shaw is now doing is continuing some of the stuff that Dr. Phillips started, but the only difference is that Mr. Shaw is trying to give back to the people of this country, but taking away the politics out of it. All that has been done thus far is indeed needed, and what Mr. Shaw is continuing with, and he made it very clear at the press briefing that they had with the IMF, that the fiscal responsibility must continue. It must.
It has to. It has to, and I know our feedback question this afternoon is whether or not we should continue with the IMF, the extended fund facility deal with the IMF when it comes to an end. And I think it would only be wise if the administration enters into a new deal with them, if not on the same terms, but that same fiscal prudence that we had to undergo. Yes, the same kind of restraint that we had to undergo. I think those are important components that has to be kept, because I think it kept us on a path, yes, where we at some point in time we can say that we could see where we're going, that we could see the progress. And I think that, I mean, I've not read Ian Boyne's piece, but I think basically, having listened to the presentations of the three persons thus far, there is nothing fundamentally different that they have put forward. It's a continuation of the progress. It's a continuation of the things that are good. And I think that's how administrations ought to operate. Those that are good, you keep and you continue. And where you can tweak to ensure good, yes, you can tweak it and continue with it.
Indeed, Ralston. Well, we're up on the break again, listeners. I want to apologize for not having financial analyst Dennis Strong. Our producers did, in fact, got him, but he indicated that he had an emergency. Nevertheless, we have to continue with the show. We're up on the break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from Opposition Spokesman on Finance, Dr. Peter Phillips. This is Talk Jamaica. Please stay with us.
streets of Lamar, Westland, call them today at 918-0945 or 381-1960. Email advanced.science@hotmail.com. Advanced style, advanced look, advanced quality, advanced science.
It's 5 o'clock.
Yes, man. I saw the place will look clean all the time. Me just wish there some Mr. Keith would have keep in place. All them heap a whole sinking them have thrown down. So the rainwater circle in a them? A them things they breed mosquito. Me I go tell him if he make we help him clean up.
You really are going to do that, Cherry?
Of course.
You have time.
You think so the mosquito them are go hungry make Mr. Keith and left we can feel we yard clean? All are we at risk of mosquito disease like chick-V and dengue and the new one we name Zick-V. So we better prevent mosquito breeding.
True. Can we call him? Mr. Keith! Mosquito prevention is everybody's business. Protect yourself from Zick-V. Keep your surroundings mosquito-free.
Listen to Talk Jamaica and Talk Jamaica Online Radio this and every Sunday between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. between April 24 and May 22 for a chance to win a weekend in the MK Homes giveaway. MK Homes is a beautiful 2-bedroom bed and breakfast vacation home which opens to a spacious patio and garden space suitable for hosting a family barbecue. It is in close proximity to the Marley Beach and approximately 10 minutes from White River in St. Mary. Enjoy a relaxed and peaceful weekend by recording the word given each week during Talk Jamaica. Participants must also like both Talk Jamaica and MK Homes Facebook pages. Once all 5 words have been collected, an email with your name and contact number must be sent to info@talkjamaicaradio.com. That's info@talkjamaicaradio.com. The winner will be announced on Sunday, May 29, 2016. The MK Homes giveaway is brought to you by Talk Jamaica Online Radio and MK Homes, located at Graham Street, Oterias. Telephone 432-5879. That's 432-5879. Listen to Talk Jamaica Online Radio live on TalkJamaicaRadio.com and via the Talk Jamaica Radio mobile app, free from the Google Play Store. Talk Jamaica, truly Jamaican.
Welcome back to Talk Jamaica here on Talk Jamaica Radio. We are streaming live on TalkJamaicaRadio.com. My name is Ralston Chamberlain. My co-host this afternoon is Sanjay Lewis. He's sitting in for Ricardo Brooks. Dr. Peter David Phillips is a household name in Jamaican politics, a former Minister of Transport, Health, National Security, and more recently, Finance, Planning, and the Public Service. Dr. Phillips is one of the longest-serving Member of Parliament. He represents the constituency of St. Andrew East Central.
Now, sitting on the opposition benches, Dr. Phillips has been strident in his criticism of the government's $580 billion budget for the 2016-2017 fiscal year. He has also critiqued the tax relief package and the accompanying tax package. To discuss these and other issues, we are now joined by Opposition Spokesman on Finance, Dr. Peter Phillips. Dr. Phillips, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir. First question to you, Dr. Phillips. You have labeled the government's budget as a sham. Tell us why you have said that.
Well, the first point I think to be borne in mind is that the budget itself is going to be inadequate to meet the needs of the country and of the social services. You know, the one good part of the budget that is there really is the capital budget, which represents a real increase. And it is an increase that was occasioned by the lowering of the primary surplus target and the agreement which we negotiated with the International Monetary Fund to relax, to use those funds for growth-inducing projects on the capital side. So there's no problem with what is stipulated on the capital side. But when you look at the recurrent, that part of the budget which covers day-to-day operations and the delivery of services, where the budget is in real terms smaller than the budget for last year, what it really means is that the money voted will in fact provide fewer services, will not meet the demand that is there for security services, for example, for education, for children support services, for a lot of the welfare needs. It won't be met from those. So that's the first point. Secondly, I think there are the assumptions going into the budget are also unreal assumptions. For example, the budget assumes a price for oil at $36. Oil is already at $46 a barrel, and the projections in the marketplace are that price is likely to rise even more. So that means that the government expenditure for transport services, for example, is going to be greater than is provided for in the budget. The third reason is that the revenue estimates, well, before we get to the revenue estimates, there are other expenditures, such as the costs that are going to be involved in the government's announced intention to operate 2 sugar factories for a short period of time. They say 3 months to cover the crop. That's going to involve significant expenditure, which is not provided for in the budget. They have said that they won't exceed the 200 million voted last year. That's all well and good, but what was voted last year doesn't carry over into this year. You need to make provision in this year's budget for it, and we don't see those provisions. So that, in addition, there is the whole question of the reliability of the revenue estimates, particularly the estimates that you have for the expected increase in GCT inflows, the estimates for SCT, special consumption tax inflows, and the estimates for the increase in PAYE, when, as we all know, they are giving up a significant inflow on the PAYE side, and the expectations for an increase really don't seem to be based on anything. So that's the set of reasons why we don't think that the budget really is a realistic one.
We had the minister on, Dr. Phillips, about a week ago, and he mentioned that they are considering having a tax amnesty and also drive compliance to increase the inflows. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think compliance will help. Compliance is a good thing. The issue is not whether or not to have compliance. The issue is whether compliance will deliver to the extent that they have factored in. Now, compliance measures are good and compliance expectations are good, but sound budgetary planning doesn't have you making unrealistic expectations as to what will be delivered and then casting the whole budget on that. You follow?
Yes.
All right, let me put this to you then, Dr. Phillips, because you have critiqued the government's budget and you speak about it being inadequate. But one of the arguments that they have put forward was that this is your budget and it's just a continuation of your budget. How do you react to that?
Well, you see, first of all, I reject the notion. The fact is, yes, in many respects, we would have, many of the amounts would have been there. But for example, they cannot claim that it is our budget. Our budget did not have the particular assumptions, for example, of a budgetary deficit. we were proposing to run a balanced budget. In fact, we were expecting a slight surplus on the budget. Our budget did not have this particular set of tax arrangements, which have given a great destabilizing impact on the whole budget, and is what has put them into this particular problem where they have had to overestimate, because they said they were going to deliver on this tax promise without any taxation. They've had to put in the taxation. It was more than they bargained for, and they have been unable, therefore, to meet all the needs that are there in the budget for actual delivery of services. We had no plan such as they had to ask the education ministry to do more with less, because of election promises which had no backative in real budgetary numbers. So to claim that it is the same budget that we had is really not accurate.
I want to bring to you Dr. Phillips. I don't know if you had a chance to read Ian Boyne's piece this afternoon in today's Gleaner,
No.
But he pointed to something that you had mentioned in your budget presentation, which is urging the administration to put in credible programs that will help to prevent high and recurring fiscal deficits. But one of the things that he said to you, Dr. Phillips, is that you can't have your cake and eat it, because if the government is supposed to do that, then they would have to raise taxes now to close the deficits and cut the expenditure. And in addition to that, Dr. Phillips, if the government had decided that they are not going to continue with their $1.5 million plan, then the opposition would not keep quiet on it.
No, but the point is, they haven't delivered on this 1.5 plan. There is no April payday. There is no $18,000. There is no doing it without taxes. What they have is a face card behind which they are trying to retreat and cover the fact that they haven't been able to deliver. And Boyne, I haven't read Boyne. But if he's making the point that you described, it really doesn't hold. What is the case is that they are putting a fragile economic recovery and the economic stability that has been hard won by the sacrifices of many at risk, simply because they went recklessly down a path that made a promise that could not be substantiated, could not be supported, and now in retreating, they are causing this great upheaval in the system. There was no need to run a deficit, save and except for the problem that they have caused for themselves. So, if you set out to do something wrong because somebody was going to criticize you for it, can't be justification for keeping on the wrong path.
Mm-hmm. Then what do you make of
I don't understand the point being made by as you described there.
But what do you make of the point then? Because Mr. Shaw, when he was on, also mentioned that the promise that they made was only for a specific number of individuals, but now all PAYE earners will benefit from the new announcement.
It said from the beginning that plan could not be done. What they have done, what in fact the fund has forced them to do and described as essential, is to raise the threshold for everyone. They got fixed on the 1.5 and says, well, we are doing it for everyone. All well and good. We are all for raising the threshold. We did it 3 times in the past 3 years. But you have to do it in a way that takes account of the very real fragility that your economy still faces. And, so I am not opposed in principle to the idea of doing it. What I'm opposed to is doing it in a way that, in fact, as this way does, causes widespread hardship on the entire labor force to benefit a very small number in ways that could have been avoided by both providing the benefit and increased benefit to that smaller number and not having to burden the everyone, because we were just at the time. If you look at the outturn, for the first time in years, we are seeing that the taxation inflows were settling down, coming in, and the economy was getting itself into basic balance. Inflation rates were down to 3%. The balance of payments was at historically low levels, as was inflation. Tax revenues were flowing in and meeting target, and you had a great degree of confidence. Exchange rate depreciation had slowed. So all of that had occurred. So, but what you had was, in order to implement a poorly designed, politically opportunistic plan, which could not, in fact, be implemented, you have put the economy through the ringer. That's what has happened, plain and simple. And it wasn't necessary. What we have to do, even since they are determined to do it, is to ensure that the damage to the country is not prolonged and does not cause irretrievable damage.
I want you to react, if you will, Dr. Phillips, to what the IMF has said recently, and they have said that this tax package is a bold move and a necessary one. How do you react to that?
No, if you read the paragraph 6 of the fund statements, they said the decision to implement offsetting measures, that is to say, the tax-raising measures, which the government had said originally they would not have done, that decision was bold and was necessary, was essential, which is what we had always said it was essential. And bold meaning that they finally came to terms with this necessity and put in place a substantial tax package. So they said that. The fund also said, if you read the following sentence after that sentence, the fund also said that the second phase of implementing this increase in the threshold needs to have accompanying measures to target benefits, and I'm paraphrasing here, to the poorest and most vulnerable segments of the population, in order to ensure that they are not put at an extraordinary disadvantage, which is another way of saying that the implementation of the first phase of this movement to indirect taxes, which have a disproportionate impact on those with lower incomes, has already had that impact on the poorest and most vulnerable, which is one of the reasons why he said it was ill-conceived at the outset in the way that it was. The fund is trying its best to salvage, and in fact we should applaud the fund for salvaging not only good economic sense from what was a poorly conceived JLP plan, but also for pointing out the essential need to protect the poorest and the most vulnerable. The fund is trying to do so in ways that don't rupture or unnecessarily cause friction in their relationship with the government of Jamaica. And I understand that also.
I want to go to point 7 of the same report, Dr. Phillips, that the fund speak about efforts needed to reduce the size of the public sector, improve public sector resource allocation, and basically cutting the public sector wage bill. Are we to read into that they're calling for us to do a drastic cut in public sector where persons might be sent home?
Well, that question is best placed to the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister. But it is clear that something has to be done. We have said so. We had indicated that we were going to be proceeding with voluntary separation arrangements and other arrangements which would facilitate the lowering of the overall employment levels. This is something that is necessary. How they intend to do it is you need to ask them. That is to say, the government. And also, we have to bear in mind that they are going to be facing a set of negotiations, very early next year, when the current contract period comes to an end, and that both tasks are going to be quite difficult, let me put it that way, to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. You said, Dr. Phillips, recently that you would not be adverse to the government going into the NHT to shore up the budget, because if we look at the figures now, we should anticipate that there is going to be a shortfall, and Dr. Biles spoke about that recently. What would you expect the government to say or to justify as their reason for going into the NHT to shore up the budget? If that's the route they go.
I would hesitate to speak for the government. I think what is important most of all, and this is what I will say, is that a way needs to be found that will enable both the government to deliver the basic social services, and indeed more than basic services, need to ensure that the progress in education, for example, and the reforms on the security side are sustained, and in the health sector, that all of these are sustained, while at the same time ensuring that Jamaica continues the path of significant debt reduction upon which it was embarked. Because, it is a difficult task for the country, no doubt about it. But in the end, the only way we're going to be able to educate our young people and ensure that we have 100% literacy coming out of the primary and secondary school system, that we are preparing people for the world of work, that we will be able to deliver the infrastructure that will facilitate business investment, that we are going to keep interest rates moving down. The only way we can do all those things is to have adequate debt reduction. Mm-hmm. So any reasonable plans that continues the path of debt reduction, which, as I have said before, many have sacrificed, our pensioners, our public sector workers, and others, requires debt reduction. Once there are credible plans and a reasonable track record, and a genuine effort to engage all stakeholders, which requires transparency and equity, then we are prepared to engage in such a dialogue and to cooperate with the government.
Dr. Phillips, economist Damian King, labeling the budget, he had said, he described it basically as a balanced budget change in taxation. And in essence, he's saying that the government had not only changed the conversation in Jamaica through its focus on fundamentals, but has effectively removed an unfair, arbitrary tax which only a tiny percentage of the country had been burdened with. And that has been the conversation from some persons, that there's a move from direct taxation to indirect taxation. I want to hear your views on that.
Well, quite frankly, I think Damian is anticipating a move which has not yet been determined by the government. The government still has to figure out a way that will enable it to replace what is about 20% of its tax revenues. And to do that, well, maybe a little less than, and it is a significant amount of money, and it will have to do so in a way that doesn't extraordinarily cut the budgets nor extraordinarily burden the poor, because we still have this particular predicament that that there is a great deal of what you might call income inequality and a great deal of poverty in the country. And so the particular abolition of all the direct taxes that they talk about is something which the administration here stumbled into rather than having had a clear-cut plan. And I know Damon, who has always been a devotee of this particular rebalancing, is pleased by it. But I think we need to see what plan emerges. Now, what the government has said is that there is a mission coming from the fund which will have to help them, or which is scheduled to help them think through these problems. But consider, for example, that one way is going to have to be to remove all those zero-rated basic foods and exempt basic foods on which the poorest rely, and to put GCT on them to replace the incomes, to replace the tax revenues. That carries with it very great difficulties for the people of this country and for the poorest people in this country. It's not saying that it can be contemplated, but it has to be contemplated with care, and we have to ensure that we are not imperiling the livelihood and of these persons, or they are putting at risk the social stability and social fabric of the country. Mm-hmm. So these are not easy choices that are there, and are not going to be entered into willy-nilly by anyone.
Mm-hmm. I hear you speak of revenue measures, Dr. Phillips, but if you could share with our listeners, what were some of the revenue measures that you were contemplating while you were developing your budget?
We hadn't reached that point, Let me tell you, the budget process really depends on what the actual outturns are going to be and what would be the need for particular revenues. There are some critical areas that needed to be rebalanced and to replace some revenues. So, for example, and they mentioned them, removing asset taxes, unifying the rate of corporate tax. Basically, we had to look at some of those measures, reducing the stamp duties that would facilitate greater investment activity. Those were some of the issues that we had on our plate, which, as you know, would mean more giving up revenues in the first instance, and so those would have to be replaced. But they were not necessarily weighty measures. We also contemplated that we would want to be reducing the rate of GCT, and that was what those were the things we were looking at. But, the exact amount of revenues that you will need is something that gets worked out really in the last quarter. So you're looking at, February, March to work these out. So we had no concrete plans beyond those issues of really what you might call evening out some of the inequalities and inequities in the budget.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that you did, Dr. Phillips, you criticized the government's $7 tax on gas, and you kind of said that it's going to have an adverse effect on many persons, including our pensioners, our school children, our taxi drivers. But one of the criticisms that many have levied against you is that you had put a $7 tax on gas at the time when oil prices were low. How do you respond to that?
Well, oil prices were going down, and precisely we took that steps in order to ensure that we were able to bring stability in the energy market in the event that they moved up again, both by way of purchasing a hedge and by way of ensuring that we would undertake investments, capital investments, which would reduce our reliance on oil. For 3-4 decades since the first oil price shock, Jamaica has done very little, or certainly not enough, to reduce its reliance on oil, which we don't produce. Some things have been done in recent years, but we needed to do much more to, especially on the conservation side and reducing the operating costs of our schools, hospitals, etc. That's what we are aiming to do. But it certainly wouldn't be advisable in 2 successive years to put on a blow, especially now that prices are trending up again. And as your private investor and community, the areas where your jobs are going to come from, have just been settling down into a dynamic. In the same way that we introduced the basic room tax in the tourism sector. You couldn't, having done it 1 year, just keep going back every year to do it again and again. This is what that particular measure on the part of the government, again, was occasioned by the ill-conceived, politically motivated promise, which has been gambling with the stability of the economy, and more specifically, gambling with the energy economy, which is essential to any modern economy. So, it's a decision that the government has had to take. I mean, time will tell, but it's certainly going to have an effect on prices and price levels, because energy percolates right throughout the economy, almost every area. So it's going to affect the cost of production in your factories. It's going to affect the cost of distribution of your goods. It's going to affect the cost that your workforce faces in just getting to and from work. It's going to have a destabilizing effect on prices overall in the wrong direction.
Okay. Dr. Phillips, the deal that you inked with the IMF comes to an end next year. And we hear Richard Biles already suggesting that, he would recommend that the government continues on another program with the IMF. I want to hear your views on that.
Well, we are waiting to hear what the government is proposing. It's really going to be a function of the degree of confidence that the government has been able to engender both in domestic market and in international markets and among the international partners, whether there will be a general expectation for a continuation of some sort of relationship with the fund or not. To the extent that there would be a deficiency in the level of confidence that people have towards the administration, then the demand and the expectations that there would be some sort of continuation in the relationship would be greater.
Okay. Let me shift gear a little bit, Doctor.
I thought you were coming to an end, sir.
This is the final one. In terms of the allocation that we see for the Labor Day projects, I know the opposition in a report in the Gleaner this morning has raised some issue of it being inequitable. What is the main issue that the opposition has with how the money was allocated?
Well, first of all, it is blatantly discriminatory in political terms. All the government ministers have got much more money than the entire opposition side, with the exception of the leader of the opposition. And then the Prime Minister has got 3 million and the leader of the opposition 1 for a constituency. So it's discriminatory on straight political terms. Secondly, I think it really sows the seeds of divisiveness in communities. No, the people in one community or another, these Jamaican people, are not any less deserving of having Labor Day projects than another, simply by virtue of who they chose to elect. Because in all of them, you have people who are PNP, JLP, or no P at all, but their communities deserve to have improved services and infrastructure, which these resources are supposed to facilitate. And then I think it is particularly disappointing, given the fact that this particular approach to Labor Day, which Michael Manley helped institute in the 1970s, was directly intended to reduce the extent of tribalism in the country and the divisiveness in our civic and political culture. Prior to that, Labor Day used to be commemorated with marches from opposing party union groupings. And that was, in a sense, with bipartisan agreement between Mr. Shearer and Michael Manley. It was replaced with this national effort to put work, to celebrate work, the nobility of work, the value of work. And what has happened is that by stroke of a pen, this ugly specter of tribalistic excess is threatening once again to bring about divisions in this very important and unifying national tradition that we have.
All right. Can I thank you, Dr. Phillips, Opposition Spokesman on Finance, for joining us this afternoon for your candid and frank response?
Thank you very much, sir. All the best to you and your listeners.
Thank you.
All right.
And have a very happy and energetic Labor Day when it comes tomorrow.
All right, thank you. There you have it, listeners. We were speaking with the Opposition Spokesman on Finance, Dr. Peter Phillips, sharing his views on the budget. What are some of the expectations and what were the reasons behind his criticism of the Jamaica Labour Party-led administration budget presented to us by the Finance Minister Audley Shaw.